Clay, I want to talk to you about this political environment on the Republican side these days. Your friend Mr. Hale will be announcing his candidacy for the GOP nomination for governor this week. And whether it was by accident or not, it seemed like former Governor Hogan has dropped a certain hit and a certain hit on the current governor. It creates a lot of suspense. Tell me what's going on as in your life.
I have to disclose up front, I am an advisor now to the Hale for Governor campaign, so I want to disclose that and put that up front. Ed Hale is going to announce his candidacy for governor on Wednesday at 10 o'clock in Canton at the corner of Boston and Clinton Street. And for those of you that don't know, Canton used to be a total crap hole. It was a brownfield. There was junk everywhere. Exxon Mobil had a refinery there. The soils were soaked with oil. And about 30 years ago, Ed said that he had an interest in maybe doing something there. So he bought a smaller parcel there for his barge business, ended up selling it to the city, and then had some money and said, you know something, I really want to do something nice here. And it would benefit the city and it would benefit him. And he, over the course of years, with a lot of his own money, developed Canton to what it is today. There's shopping centers. There's that Care First Tower now. There is restaurants. There's places for people to shop, and there's housing and offices there. It really was a renaissance for Baltimore City on that end of town. In doing that, in addition with his trucking and his barge business, and with his banking business, literally created tens of thousands of jobs. And I respect him as a leader and an economic leader. He had some failures. He's had a lot of successes. And that is a guy that I think ought to be the governor of the state. He has a few points that, and I don't want to get ahead of him tomorrow. He's going to say a lot of things, but a couple things I can talk about. One thing is he wants to look at the state government. It's just bloated. Not since Marvin Mandel in the early 1970s has the government taken a real look at its size and scope, whether there's areas of overlap. Back in 1973, we had 12 state departments, independent departments. Now we have 19 and 100 offices that either aren't connected with an agency or are independent. That's a lot of funding that has to be done. The other thing he wants to do is he wants to not get the fiscal house in order to bring back all of our AAA bond ratings and bring Maryland back into a prestigious position as being one of the few states to have that. The other thing that must be looked at, and Governor Moore may tell you that, oh no, that's hands off, that we have to look at is mandatory spending. There needs to be an adult conversation with the leaders in both the House and the Senate about not only the blueprint, but what's going on with Medicaid, because that is an ever-expanding automatic increase in the amount of spending that the state government is obligated to every year. Not to say that they need to be eliminated, but they need to be re-examined and brought back into reality-based. Maryland is one of the few states that has so much mandatory spending without regard to revenues, and I think that's reprehensible. I got to say, the largest thing he's looking at is the energy crisis. He wants to bring back more traditional power sources or keep the ones that we have online. If it was up to Governor Moore in 2025, Brandon Shores would have gone offline and we'd have been in a heck of a mess a week or two ago. And nuclear energy, and have the state work with industry to make that happen. Nuclear power plants last 40 to 80 years, and I think power generation is a much more effective way to spend public funds than funding a red line that originally was turned down because it cost $3 billion, and they turned it down because it cost too much. Now the governor's going forward with this, and it costs $9 billion. And the three of us know $9 billion is going to be the basement, not the ceiling on the cost of that. Those are two large things that he wants to address.
Second, but Clay, before he can take on Governor Moore, he has to win a primary. And as I was saying in my introduction, it seems like Mr. Hogan will likely become a candidate himself. I mean,
Governor Hogan's been teasing everybody on Facebook and social media. He put up that clip last week that showed the bus. Should I sell it or rewrap it and put it out on the road again? And I say, sell it. Ed Hale will buy it. He'll put his wrapper on it. We've been there, done that. He's had his chance. And if the best the Republicans can do is recycle the past, God bless him. He's also got a record to run on where the last term that he had, he really was not totally absentee, but was absentee. He turned over the reins of government to Boyd Rutherford during COVID. He had Governor Rutherford run Board of Public Works hearings, a lot of them. And that's something that the governor himself should really be sitting in on. There's also indications and some evidence that maybe the projects and road projects that he had approved were maybe some self-dealing, even involving, say, his stepmother's property and affordable housing contracts going to Hogan companies, clients. I'm saying that there's evidence out there. I don't know if there's any criminal activity or not, but if he gets in the race, these are things that are going to be fully explored.
Len, is this good news for Democrats?
Oh, my God, yes. I love it. Clay, my man, rock on, brother. Bring the fire, bring the heat, bring me something good to eat. This is absolutely wonderful. A contested Republican primary that's going to get a little chippy. It's the best thing that's happened for Governor Moore in some time. And you know, the governor has taken a couple of hits recently. There was a poll that came out last week. We talked about that. I have no idea, honestly, how, two firms that are putative allies of the Moore administration managed to come out with a poll showing the governor, experiencing some erosion around the margins, and putting it out 2 days before Mako when, 2,800 people had nothing to do down at the beach other than chatter about polls and politics. But be that as it may, that controlled the news cycle. So now we're seeing the likelihood of a hotly contested Republican primary. And as Clay knows, and as you know, Dave, the Republican Party has a pretty rich and distinguished history in Maryland of knocking prohibitive frontrunners off of their perch, starting with Louise Gore in 1974, knocking off prohibitive frontrunner, a guy named Larry Hogan, this former governor's father, who was serving in the House of Representatives at the time. 1994, Ellen Sauerbrey knocking off Helen Bentley, who was considered to be not only the front runner to win the Republican gubernatorial nomination that year, but was considered the early odds-on favorite to go ahead and win the election, and was in what was expected to be a banner year for Republicans. Ellen Sauerbrey knocked her off, and then just in the last cycle, we saw Dan Cox, the Republican who is to the right of Attila the Hun and several IQ points dumber than Attila the Hun, knocking off Kelly Schultz, who I thought was one of the most accomplished candidates for governor that we have had in the last 50 years. Had she run, she would have given Governor Moore everything he could handle. I still think he would have won, because it's Maryland and there's such a prohibitive advantage. But Kelly Schultz would have been a very credible standard bearer. Instead, the Republicans nominated a complete idiot, and they got the results they deserved. So I am thrilled to see there is a climate of discord over in the Republican Party for a change, as opposed to the usual state of play in Maryland and American politics, which is the Democrats turning into a circular firing squad. I will push back slightly on something that Clay said. He's not wrong. His analysis of what happened in Canton is just a bit incomplete. Yes, Canton was a mess. It was a commercial and neighborhood center whose best days were long in the rear view. And yes, his candidate, Ed Hale, invested a considerable amount of time, effort, and treasure into restoring Canton to its long forgotten dominance as a thriving commercial center. But Paris Glendenning, who was the governor at the time, deserves enormous credit for making Canton one of his very first object lessons in the rehabilitative power of smart growth. You may remember, Clay, that the American Can Company building was one of the very first aging industrial centers that was repurposed and rebuilt as a thriving commercial center, retail, thanks to smart growth dollars, as well as brownfields legislation that was passed by the governor in the legislature at the time to relieve the property owner from the sole financial responsibility of cleaning up an area where the groundwater and the ground had been contaminated by underground industrial gas tanks. So when I think back to what happened in Canton, I think of it as a perfect combination of public investment and private enterprise. That's the sweet spot in Maryland. And I really do think we need to get back to that mentality where the private sector provides the innovative genius, they provide the risk, and the state is there to say, what can we do to support and move forward, and then provide the resources and then get the hell out of the way. I just want to say that because Paris Glendenning is often forgotten and his achievements tend to be lost in the fog of history. But without Paris Glendenning, without the smart growth philosophy, Canton doesn't happen.
I just have two short points on that, Len. Number one, you all are assuming facts, not evidence. I'm not convinced Larry Hogan's going to run, and the media is creating this Hale versus Hogan thing. I'm not convinced he's running. Because if he does, he takes the risk of being, another loser again. He lost to Angela also Brooks, and he also pulled out of that presidential campaign. And I'm not quite sure he wants to do that. Also, if he was to win, he has a lot of difficult decisions to make to clean this mess Governor Moore has created up, and that will make him extremely unpopular. The other thing is, and I appreciate what you're saying about Paris Glendenning, but this is one individual who put $50 or more million out of his own pocket into that project that I don't think anybody else would have done, not in a brownfield area like that. So I give Ed Hale credit for spearheading the renaissance of Canton.
It would have cost him at least twice that had it not been for the smart growth investments and not for the smart growth brownfields legislation that relieved him of a considerable amount of financial obligations to clean up the site. But I like Ed Hale. I will say this: Ed has a home in Easton. And when I was working with Robbie Gill from the YMCA to start our youth soccer league, FC Tread Avon, Ed Hale, in his capacity as owner of the Baltimore Blast, actually brought players down to participate in our summer camps, to do training with our kids. He brought down Andrew Hoxie, Tony Donatelli, William Vanzella, gave these kids, including my son, God rest his beloved soul, some days that they will never forget. So no, I'm never going to say anything bad about Ed Hale. I don't think he's going to win, but I do think he is, by virtue of his experience and his blunt spokenness and his willingness to pull out the stops, I think he's going to create a much more interesting election cycle by virtue of his participation in it.
Hey, Clay, very quickly, what's your hot take?
My hot take, my winner, and I've said this twice already, with 2-3 weeks separating it, is my friend Len Foxwell, for his efforts with a pastor in Easton. No one else could have done what he did. I don't care what anybody says. That was a national effort with a lot of politicians and people that cared about Easton, that rallied around and did this because of Mr. Len Foxwell. He deserves all the credit, in my view. My loser this week, and of course, I'm advising the Hale Commission, is Governor Moore for his sinking poll ratings and approval numbers. And I was shocked and surprised at how far they went down. I saw the low 50s. I think that's good news for my guy.
Okay, Len.
So first of all, Clay, all politics and partisanship aside, thank you, man. I appreciate the kind words. Listen, I was a very small part of a very, very good team of people who were all pointing in the same direction. They loved the pastor, and they wanted to get him released from detention and get him back with his family. I've received more credit than I deserve. But I appreciate sincerely and truly the kind words. My winner this week is actually the consumers of the town of Easton, because it seems as if there is finally some forward movement on an issue that has long vexed this wonderful community, and that is the prohibition on food trucks. We have seen over the last couple of weeks where consumers are saying, wait a minute, food trucks are great. They provide, affordable, convenient meals to people on the run. They're a godsend for hospital personnel down on Washington Street who don't have the luxury of walking or driving somewhere to have a nice leisurely lunch. If they just need to grab a sandwich or a pita or something like that, they can do it right off of a food truck. And they just kind of add to the vibrance and the vitality of a downtown area. And for reasons that I will never understand, a previous mayor and a previous council took the step of prohibiting the operation of food trucks inside town of Easton limits. It looks like this mayor and this council are finally going to take another look and possibly bring our food retail laws even further into the 21st century. Now, since I'm sitting in Baltimore and not Easton right now, I gotta say that my loser is my home neighborhood of Mount Vernon, with the news that the Mount Vernon Marketplace, which has long been a neighborhood icon, is closing. This just further accelerates a commercial decline in the area. We have seen the closure of a grocery store, which is Eddie's. We have seen a couple of bars closed down along Charles and Calvert Street, and now with a really good, once popular food hub. I think the area is in a little bit of a transitional period, and it really goes to illustrate one thing, which is that if you aren't safe, and if you don't have the perception that businesses and individuals are safe, then the economy is going to flag. Yeah. Things are going in the right direction in Baltimore at long last, but this is a sobering reminder that we have a long way to go. And it's going to take fresh leadership and a willingness to go outside the box and be aggressive in the continued effort to bring down not just murders, but also property crimes, nuisance crimes, and non-fatal violent crime to get this economy back to where it should be.
Well, we have to leave it there. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next week.
See you guys.
Hold on.